Is that the same? There we go. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. We're a couple minutes behind. We've had technical challenges this morning, but that seems to be the MO lately. Before we get started, I just want to remind everybody, especially everybody online that's watching this or that will watch this, that we have an app now. You can go to your app store, whether you're on Google or on your iTunes app store, and download Walkworthy Church app. And then also we have our YouTube channel has come up, and there's several of our messages on YouTube. If you can go on there, just go on YouTube, type in Walkworthy Church, and you'll find us, and then just go ahead and subscribe to us. And then when you look on the app, we have a YouTube connection there. So just so you know, and I'll mention that again at the end. So we're still on a mission. We're on a pursuit, and we're going through the book of Mark to understand the message that Jesus brought, not just through his words, but through his actions. Now, words without action could just be seen as noise. A long time ago, John F. Kennedy said, as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. As believers, the best testimony that we have, the way that we honor the Lord, is to allow our behaviors to reflect what we profess, what we say we believe. This means that we must learn and understand what it means to be a Christ follower. On Wednesday nights, we've been going through the book of Paul's letter. We've been going through Paul's letter to the church at Corinth. And one of the things that I've learned, or one of the things that I believe, is that church was very ineffective for a long time. It was ineffective because its testimony had become skewed. In my opinion, the reason they had the problems that they had, and the reason that Paul wrote the letters that he wrote to them, was because they valued above everything else, they valued knowledge, especially self-intellect. And I think today, in many ways, we're much in the same place. We value knowledge. This knowledge, we think that we've arrived, we think that we've gotten somewhere because we're better educated. We have technology at our fingertips. Everybody carries around in their pocket a phone that gives them access to the world in just a couple of clicks. Most people's phones, not everybody's, but most people's phones that they carry in their pocket uses more technology today than it took to get our first man to the moon. And we carry that in our pocket. And we think that we've arrived. We think that we're better off. We have access to information all over the place, and so that we think that we've gone ahead. It's said that information is power, but it's that kind of attitude that brought us, one, to a place of self-reliance. We don't rely on anybody else. And to me, it makes me ask the question, are we really any smarter? See, intelligence and common sense don't necessarily go hand in hand. I know a lot of people that are really, really, really smart people and don't have any common sense. The actual result of this intelligence and this technological advancement more than anything is stress. We're more stressed today than ever. At least that's my opinion. Maybe it's just perspective. Paul wrote to Timothy in his letters to him, in his pastoral letters to him, he said, think about what I'm saying. The Lord will help you understand all these things. What Paul is saying is that we can use our reason, we can use our common sense, we can use the knowledge that we have. That in our relationship with the Lord will help us grow. He'll add to it. He'll make it so we can understand better. He'll give us that wisdom. Pay attention here to what Paul's saying. Pay attention to what this message is for us. The Lord God is willing to give us understanding. He is willing to help us grow. And that should become the basis of the way that we think. We can't use God's ability and knowledge as a replacement for understanding. He helps us grow. We have to have some responsibility in this, but he helps us. Again, think over what I say, Paul said. For the Lord God will give you understanding. Solomon wrote, pursue wisdom, pursue understanding. It's more valuable than gold. Paul encouraged the pursuit of wisdom. But see, that comes from a prayerful pursuit of intimacy and knowledge of God and his word. It doesn't seem to happen any other way. James, Jesus' brother, wrote. He wrote, "For just as the body without the spirit is dead, so also is faith without works." In this letter that James wrote, he said mental assent alone is worthless. He said it has to result in something. And he's comparing that faith, that knowledge that we've grown into, that trust that we've grown into, and that we've adapted to a body. If it doesn't turn into something, it's like a body without a spirit. We're just dead. Now, we've been on this journey, and the whole motivation behind the reason we're going through the book of Mark is that I want to see that there's evidence of our faith in the way that we live. There is evidence of Jesus' mission and message, not just in his words, but in his action. Belief in Jesus Christ as Lord, trust in God's love and compassion isn't just a mental exercise. It's something that we live out. See, that relationship changes, it transforms us. Real love, that forgiveness that we've experienced, that grace that we've come to know, it does that. It changes the way you act. It changes your view. And as trust grows, so does our wisdom. You're active today, Mama. You got them going all over the place. And that's okay. She's got a pen. She didn't want that. She goes, wait a minute. I did want that. Oh, sweetie pie. One of those movies, you guys know that I like to watch movies. One of those movies that I really enjoy is a movie called Mr. Holland's Opus. Glenn Holland, the star of the movie, had this dream. He had a dream that he was going to compose a great symphony. He was going to become a great composer and write the all-American symphony. It was going to be a classic. But as it happens in all of our dreams, we all know this. Life happens, right? And he ended up, because he got married and his wife ended up pregnant and he had a kid, he had to take a job to pay for life, to be a good steward of what he had. So he thought that, becoming a music teacher would be the best of both worlds. There's a few things that really deeply touch me about this story. One of the things is this man put his dreams on hold. Watch your foot. She threw the ball at you. He put his dreams on hold. He chose to sacrifice. Hey, you got my message?
It's not going to be back up until Monday. They stole the copper line
Oh boy.
off the poles.
Well, that's typical. That's okay. I just wanted you to know.
Well, we knew. We've been fighting it since Thursday. There's no phones.
Oh, there's no phones either. Oh boy.
Yes, in preschool.
Oh boy. Mr. Holland, Glenn Holland, he made a sacrifice for love and for family. But he loved music so much that he wanted to use this gift that he had. He wanted to share it and maybe help some kids along the way grow. Now, he goes into high school and he starts teaching music. And like most things, because back in the 50s and the 60s and even the 70s, music was a required course, and kids didn't want to be there. They didn't, it was one of those courses you had to take. And he was doing everything he could. He thought he was trying to get them to connect. He was trying to share his passion. He couldn't get them to connect. And then there's a scene in the movie where one day he sat down at the piano after he asked them a series of questions where they just were just this blank stares off into space. And he sits down at the piano and begins to play some music. And everybody's ears perk up. Everybody's ears, and the kids they're engaged instantly. And he says, "Oh, you really like that? What do you think it is?" And they start shouting out the answer to these current tunes, these current pop hits. He says, "No, that's Beethoven. That's Beethoven." People had taken Beethoven and had an electric guitar and changed the beat a little bit, and it became music. They added some words and some lyrics about love or relationships, and all of a sudden the kids were engaged. And he was able to by that, find a bridge to connect with the kids. And all of a sudden, he began to teach them that classical music isn't ancient. It's something that's, that it builds a bridge that we connect to today. And it's kind of like that, if you think about it, when you begin to talk to people about the Lord. When you begin to talk to people about faith, most people just check out. Their eyes glaze over, they stare off into space, because they perceive that religion, that your faith is ancient knowledge. It's related to mythology. It's related to something that's past, that doesn't relate to today. People are searching for a relationship with God. They want to believe in something, but they got to see how it connects to today. And if you can find a bridge, and this is where it becomes so imperative for us to be able to tell our stories, because in telling our story, we can share how God has met us where we are today. And people can relate to that. Once they see that, they can begin to build that same relationship. We can reach people, not because we're playing classical music, but because we've brought a message that is relative today. So, we've come to this point. This whole introduction was about this point that we are in Mark's gospel. Now, last week we talked about this deep story about Jesus had went and he dealt with this man that was possessed, and he ended up casting the demons out of the man and into a herd of pigs, and the pigs killed themselves, and the people from Decapolis,
Sorry.
there we are. I gave you a map so we can see. I believe we can relate to things. From Decapolis, chased Jesus out. Now, he'd gone across the lake. He'd been over here. And he'd gone across the lake to Decapolis. And they chased him back, and so he ended up back in Capernaum. And what happens when he ends up back in Capernaum? Well, Jesus' life, the lessons that he gave, the things that he did, related in a real way, into a practical way. The best way to handle the circumstances we come across is through faith. And that's what Jesus said. We get to live out our faith in practical actions. Only believe. This is what we'll hear today that Jesus told this man. Only believe is a simple statement that says we're going to live out our faith. See, our actions speak. Our behaviors testify. Ministry is practical. And we have the opportunity to show other God's love and grace in a real way. So, we're going to get started here. Jesus arrived. Mark 5:21, when Jesus had crossed over again by boat on the other side, a large crowd gathered around him. How did they get there? How did they know he was coming back? Obviously, people sped ahead and told him that Jesus was coming. Can I tell you that when you're doing ministry, and I find this all the time, when we're serving, people know about it, they find out about it, and it brings all kinds of other people to, people will run to you. They will. He crossed over. But here's the interesting thing about this story that we're going to get into. We think it was just everybody that was coming. It was just the normal masses that were coming after Jesus. But it wasn't. There was a man that came that was a leader. He was not only a community leader, but he was a leader in the synagogue. His name was Jairus. And he made sure that everything at the synagogue was taken care of and in order. And he was living an honorable and a good life in the opinion of many people, in the view of many people. And yet, he had a tragedy come to him. He had something come across to him that, we all have life that comes up. We all have things that happen. We get in accidents, we make mistakes. We do, life happens. And we have to be ready for it. Well, this guy had a big tragedy. He came to Jesus. He fought his way through the crowd. And he came to the Messiah and he said, "My little daughter is dying. Come and lay your hands on her so she can live, so she can get well and live." He was honest about where he was. How many people do you know are coming to the Lord or coming to a church or whatever to manipulate or to get something. They think that they always deserve something. You know, if we can be honest about who we are and what's going on, we can be rescued. We can get help. God will meet us where we are, and He will meet our needs. He'll come with us and meet our needs. Jesus went with him. He took off. When Jairus said, come, Jesus didn't say, hey, wait, look, I've got all these people and everything else. Jesus saw a real need, and because He had faith, and He wanted to help this man believe, He began to go with him. Now, on the way, you ever been on the way to do something good, you've been interrupted? Happens a lot, doesn't it? Happens a lot when you're trying to, you feel like, oh, this is something I'm supposed to do, and you're trying to do the right thing, and other things come up and get interrupted. Well, Jesus, remember, there was a large crowd around Him, and they were all pressing in on Him. Can you imagine what it must have been like? Have you seen what it's like you see on the news, when a politician, when the president, when a leader walks through an area, through Los Angeles or through a big city, people are all crowded around, and he's got his entourage, he's got Secret Service around keeping people away. But Jesus, there was people pressing in on Jesus. There was a large crowd, and he was heading to Jairus' house. Well, as it was, on the way, he had an encounter. Now, he knew what was happening. He knew that he was going to fulfill a purpose. And I think that Jesus probably knew what he was going to face when he got there. But on the way, something happened. So we're going to jump a little bit ahead. I'm trying to keep up with us to Mark 5:24, and it says, and he went with him. Jesus went with him. It says, and a great number of people went after him and came around him. And a woman who had a flow of blood for 12 years and had undergone much at the hands of a number of medical men, had given all that she had and was no better, but even worse. When she had the news of the things Jesus did, she went among the people coming after him and put her hand on his robe. Now, I tell you this because there's a couple things I want to tell you. First, when we're going to do something, when we're really living out our faith, we have to be aware that maybe the Holy Spirit is guiding us to other things. So we have to be open and we can't just say, hey, I'm going here, and I can't let anything else distract me. We have to be open to what God's doing. And the other thing that happened is this woman was sick. And she was, even though she was alive, she was really a living dead person, because she couldn't fellowship. A woman that was bleeding was considered unclean. She couldn't go out in the community. If she touched anybody else, they would be considered unclean. She couldn't go to church. She couldn't be around other people. So she was living, but she didn't really have much of a life. And she had spent all her money, all her family's money, trying to get better. And she was just getting worse. She heard about what Jesus was doing, and she wanted to be helped so much that she took this huge risk. You got to think about this. There was these huge crowds around Jesus. Some of these people had to know who she was. If she went out in the community and she bumped into somebody, like you do in a crowd, they would be considered unclean, and they wouldn't be allowed to participate or to be in the community. This would have caused, at this time, her, at the very least, for her and her family to be chased out of town. Very likely, they would have stoned her. Very likely, they would have killed her. She risked it all because she believed that just having an encounter with the Lord would change her life. Now, remember what I told you about Mark. Mark, whenever there's an encounter with God, there's an immediate result. And she believed this would happen. And she just believed. She didn't even want to talk to him. All she wanted to do is touch his clothes. All she wanted to do is, you got to think about it, the robes that the men wore, they had tassels on the end of them. They had prayer shawls that have tassels hanging up the end. All she was wanting to do was just touch one of those. When she did, she got there. She wasn't known. She got there and she touched, as it says in some translations, the hem of his garment. She touched the very edge of his clothes, probably the stuff that was dragging on the ground. And instantly Jesus said, "Who touched me?" Now, would you know that? Man, I've been in a crowd of people and just been bumped up all over the place. Jesus said, somebody touched me. Well, yeah, of course, people have been touching you all over the place. But he said, power's gone out of me. And he turned around, and this lady was honest about it. And he said, your faith has made you well. Your faith has made you well. You're healed of your affliction. Now let me tell you something. Jairus asked. This is something we need to understand. Jairus asked for the Messiah to come and make his daughter well. This woman wanted to get well. Jesus said, your faith has made you well. Well, that term, that Greek term for getting well, is actually a term for salvation. See, while God cares about our circumstances, he cares about what's going on with us. He does care about the details of our life. He's concerned about our eternal spiritual health. Jesus said, your faith has made you well. You're complete, you're whole, you're saved. And you're healed on top of that. She was at the end of her rope. She needed help. And she got it. It's like I often say, God will let us, he loves us enough to let us get to the end of our rope. And he does. And when we get to the end of our rope, we can finally throw up our hands and say, help, Lord. And he's there to rescue us. Now there's a couple interesting parallels that I haven't touched on yet about this story. Jairus' daughter, we're going to find out in just a short time, was 12 years old. This woman had an issue for 12 years. There's a parallel there. There's another parallel, like I told you, about that God's plans aren't just for our best. They're for our certainty of eternity. Now, both these people had been struggling with an issue for a long time. And God used the circumstances, he's used the circumstances of life to accomplish his purpose. It reminded me as I was reading this of way back of the story of Joseph. Now you guys know the story of Joseph, I think. The whole thing where he got sold into slavery and everything else. He ended up saving the whole world because he planned, and his brothers were scared of him because they knew what they had done. They knew that they were the cause of some of his problems, but they knew what they had done. But at the end of the life, when they thought Joseph was going to punish them, he said, you planned evil against me. God planned it for the good to bring about the present result, the survival of many. Oftentimes, we think that the circumstances or situations that we're facing are for our harm. And ultimately, they're for good, not for just us, but for everybody. Well, let's get back to the encounter real quick. Let me close up the story of Jairus' daughter. Jesus encountered a great need on this way, and there was healing that took place, and there was salvation that took place. He got to the house. As soon as this was over, he was heading to Jairus' house, and people came and said, hey, stop bothering the teacher. The daughter's dead. And this is where Jesus utters just such a phrase. He tells Jairus, because Jairus is panicking, he says, don't be afraid, only believe. We need to grab that to heart. That when we think it's all crumbling down, we don't need to be afraid, we just need to have faith. Jesus got to the house, and people were mourning and weeping, and he said, why are you weeping, why are you mourning? And they said that the girl's died. And he said, hey, she hasn't died, she's just asleep. Now, he wasn't saying she's just taking a nap. I think what he's referring to here, and I think this is something we need to understand, that he's talking that she hadn't encountered the final death. Physically, she was dead because he was going to resurrect her. Remember, before Jesus was resurrected, there was a couple of people resurrected. This is one of them. Lazarus was another one. Okay? So he goes into the room, and here's the thing. He doesn't take everybody with him. He takes mom and dad and his inner circle, Peter, James, and John. They all go into the room. And Jesus reaches out. Now think about this. He reaches out and grabs the girl by the hand. Instantly, he's become unclean. Instantly, he's gotten into her situation because he's touched a dead body. Just like he was unclean when that lady touched him. But he didn't say, you touched me and you made me unclean. He healed her. He saved her. He touched this body. It's just such a lesson that Jesus gets into our muck, into our mess. into our circumstance, into the things that we've really messed up. And he rescues us when we're ready. He's always ready. But when we're ready, he rescues us. He reaches out and he grabs her hand and he tells her to wake up. And she instantly sits up. She instantly sits up. He gets her up and she begins to walk. And he tells her, hey, don't tell anybody about this. Now he's trying to say, you know what, if you start bragging about this, people are going to try and force me to a position I'm not ready for yet. But he says, don't tell anybody about this, but get her something to eat. Here's the other thing about ministry, and about especially the ministry that Jesus did. He met real needs in real ways. You see, Jairus' daughter was healed. And then he said, meet her needs. There's a story, and let me wrap up real quick here. There's a story about seminary students. They were given a task by their professor. And their task was this. They were to prepare a message on the story of the Good Samaritan, the insights of the Good Samaritan, on what it meant, what it spoke to them. And they were going to deliver it to the whole university. Now, these students didn't know that they were being tested. You see, because on the way, when they were given a time and they met with the professor, he says, okay, hey, by the way, you're running behind, you're late, the people are waiting for you. On the way, there was somebody that was planted they had a real need. They had a real need, and they had a choice. Are they going to meet the need, or are they going to go preach their message? Do you know that over 90% of the students failed? They rushed past the need to stand in front of a crowd and preach a message on a lesson that they obviously didn't learn. What's the story of the Good Samaritan about? See a need, meet a need. See a need, meet it. It doesn't matter where you're going. Stop and meet it. If you can, if it's possible, meet that need. See, life happens and we're participants. Our challenge, the thing that we must live by, is this. All things are possible if we believe. Fear goes away if we believe. Our best prayer could become this. What the father said for the kid that nobody could heal. He said, Lord, I believe. Help my unbelief. Let's pray. Father, we just thank you that you are a God who meets us right where we are. You're a God who ministers to us when we're at our most desperate times. And you're a God that loves us above all else. I thank you that you're a God that continues to help us grow in grace and in knowledge. And that you show us your love and compassion and grace in such real ways. Father, just be with us throughout this week, throughout this time of the year. We're coming into a holiday season where needs are going to be, it seems like they're going to be compounded in so many ways. May we be those conduits of love and grace, Father. During those times of service and help, may others see your faith in action. May the love of God guide you to a place that you can share both hope and help. And may you find ways to celebrate those opportunities that you come across. Family grace first, grace always. Live simple, live practical, and love eternally. Just a reminder again, we do have an app, we do have a YouTube channel. Please download the app, please subscribe. It certainly helps us a lot. Thank you, we will.
Especially today, like today when internet connection has been really bad.
Especially today. So thank you for your support and your love. Have a wonderful week.